So the first thing we want to do is launch Visual Studio. And we want to create a new project. We want a console app, .NET Framework, C#, just like before. We'll call this one Conditional Logic and hit Create. Just like before, we've got our program class and we've got our main function. And we'll start by mapping out exactly what we want our program to do. So the first thing we want to do is inform the user who would like a command, capture the user's command, respond to the user's command via conditional logic, wait for the user to end the application. Just like before, we'll be sending a message to the user, we'll be capturing a message from the user, and we will be waiting for the user to hit return to close the application. So let's go through these one by one. So hit console, right line, please type a command, and we will capture that command in a variable. So say var command equals console.readline, and that line with a semicolon. And we'll skip this one for now, and we'll just put the final one in, which is console.readline. And if you remember from the previous video, console.readline is a way of kind of pausing the application until the user enters something. And this just stops us from hitting the final brace and having the program end before the user's had a chance to read what's on screen. So the main purpose of this lesson is to cover what's known as conditional logic. Conditional logic is something you might have heard of before. It's sometimes called an if statement. Essentially, you're just comparing two variables to each other, and you might want to know whether they're true, whether they're equal, whether they're not equal, whether one is more than or less than. In this video, we'll just cover comparing the command to, the command string to another string that the user might have entered. Let's start by saying if command equals, and the important thing here is that you use two equal signs, and then we'll put our own string in here and we'll say hello. So we're saying if the command is equal to hello, do what's inside of these braces. And you'll see that the difference here from other lines of code that we've written is most lines of code end with a semicolon, whereas an if statement actually ends with squiggly brackets. And that's because if the if statement is satisfied, that is, if what we put in here is true, then it will run the code in these braces. However, if it's not true, it'll just skip past the entire element and it will jump onto our last line in this case. So what we want to do is respond to the user if their command is hello. So we would just do the usual console.writeLine, and we'll say hello yourself, smiley face. Now if we run that, we get asked for our command as expected, and then we'll type hello, because we know that's what the program's looking for. And then the program will say hello yourself. Now if I let that program end and start it again, if this time we type in goodbye, it's not looking for goodbye. So this line of code here never runs, and we just jump straight to the end of the program. So what we've done there is we've controlled the flow of our application. We've got some code that always runs, but we've got code that only runs if the user does a specific action. And in this case, it's just type in the hello command. Now, you can check if things are equal, but you can also check if they're not equal. And we do that by putting in exclamation mark equals. And that's essentially shorthand in C# for not equals. And what we might want to say is, if the command is not equal to hello, we might say to the user, you are very rude. If we run that, if we type in anything that isn't hello, we are very rude. However, if we type in hello, the program doesn't do anything because no logic was no additional logic had been met, so no additional commands ran from one of these statements. So that's just a way of, as I say, controlling the flow of the application, having certain bits of code run under certain conditions. And there is a little bit more you can do with if statements. So we could say, if command is not hello, tell the user they're very rude, and then we could say else, which is otherwise, essentially. Copy and paste this, and we will say hello yourself, just like we did before. And now if we run the program, if we say hello, our else condition was met. We didn't not type in hello, so the else statement was then matched, and the program then says hello yourself. So it's quite powerful, and actually this in addition to some of the other skills we've looked at, is one of the building blocks of complex applications. All applications have logic that will run under certain conditions. In our case here, the conditions are very simple and the output is, meaningless essentially. But you could imagine that you could be looking for a command like, do task A or do task B. And then you would have the code for task A and the code for task B inside of your conditional statement. And you can have as many of these as you want. We could put another one underneath here and say, if command equals test, and we put console.writeLine, we are now testing for user. And these would run in order just like any other line of code. So you can mix these up and you can actually nest them as well. We could have, we could put this one inside here. And we could check for the outer logic. And if the outer logic was passed, then we could check for some inner logic. And we can sort of nest them. And actually that's people refer to that as nested if statements. Like, they're not probably the best way to do that type of logic, but it does work, and you probably will find yourself doing that in a lot of your early programs. So what would probably be handy for you to do now is for you to come up with your own console application with your own set of commands and do some conditional testing for those commands.